A lot of people think that they're fighting against age. They're like, now I'm this age, right? What they really mean to say is, now's time has gone by. What we're really looking at is the amount of time that you haven't trained. Your body will adapt, whatever your age. You literally have a tool. You have a body that you can move and adapt in any way you want. Look at all the sports in the Olympics. People go, I'm going to adapt my body to do this. I'm going to adapt my body to do this. And it's all possible. The very day before I die, I want to be able to do everything I can do now.
Hi, I'm Caroline Cary and welcome to the Eat Nourish Love podcast. For over 20 years, I've created events, raised over 4 million for good causes, and been lucky enough to meet some incredible people along the way. This podcast is about exploring stories and insights that really shape us, with inspiring guests from wellness, business, self-care and personal growth. It's about learning to trust our intuition and discovering what truly matters, and how, with hard work, belief and tenacity, we can make so many things happen. So, welcome to today's Eat Nourish Love podcast. I'm thrilled to be joined by someone who has revolutionised the way we approach mobility and flexibility training. Roger Frampton. Welcome, Roger.
Thank you for having me, Caroline. Nice to be here.
Pleasure. So, you're a mobility coach, you're a best-selling author and creator of the widely recognised Frampton Method, but also you've done an incredible TED Talk. But could you tell us the journey from a top international fashion model to becoming a mobility coach? I mean, what sparked that shift?
I would say everything was kind of accidental and random, but there are certain steps along that journey that were significant and seemed at one point accidental, but have led me to where I am today. So I guess when I was modeling, there was I don't know how it is today, but you had to fit a certain silhouette. Like every guy needs to be a 38 suit and 6 foot in that day. We're talking a couple of decades later, which is different. so in that day, before I only went to the gym and I just did weights. And as I spoke about in my TED Talk, I just wanted to get as much muscle as possible, like any 16-year-old boy. And then when I started modeling, they said, listen, you're too big if you want to do well in this game, or if you want to do well in fashion modeling, then you need to be more athletic, more slim, and more fitted to this suit. Because, for example, a 38 suit is more what's recognized in the fashion industry. So my training completely changed. I dropped the weights and I started to do body weight, and everything became more about keeping a certain silhouette. So really that kicked it off. And I said it was accidental, but it played a huge role into the very training I do today and the very training that I teach, because everything is about using your body weight. And for me, I really look to the masters of body weight, who are gymnasts. They don't really train with weights, not in the traditional sense, but they use leverage and they can move their body phenomenally, and you can see this throughout the Olympics. So it's just a different way of training. Instead of using external weights to try to make the body bigger, you can use leverage and body weight.
So I think what's extraordinary, I don't know whether our listeners also agree with this, but you watch gymnastics and we watch people moving with their own body weight. It's mesmerising, I think, to see how the human body can use its own weight to build the strength and things. And I love it, absolutely love it. So you did a TED Talk, which really sort of scaled it a little bit, wasn't it? And it was called Why Sitting Down Destroys You. So how did that all come about? And when did that actually happen? When did you do the TED Talk?
So I guess the first conversation about the TED Talk was probably around 2014, so 11 years ago as of today. And again, it was an accident. Well, a lot of stuff is in my life. I was in the park training and I met this guy called Brian who had a YouTube channel, and I saw him training in the park and I used to listen and watch his show. So I went up and introduced myself. I was like, hey, I'm Roger. I watched your show. I've seen, it's called London Real, and he interviewed different people. And so we started talking, and I started talking about the training that I was doing, how I really used functional movement and body weight. And I like sitting in squats a lot, and I'm really all about that. And he was like, you should do a TED Talk on this. And I was like, oh, awesome. Do you know someone? He's like, yeah, I've just done a TED talk. I can introduce you to someone, and I'm really trying to learn a muscle up at the moment. If you help me learn my muscle up, I'll connect you with some people who can put you on stage and get you a TED talk done. And I was like, okay, awesome. So I started training Brian, and he helped me to get up onto the TED stage, and I put the talk together, and he introduced me to a guy called Ryan who did this TED event in Leamington Spa. And yeah, it just all randomly came together, just through randomly approaching a guy in a park whose show I watched, who, I was a fan of.
So what's interesting, I think, is that, there's so much talk, there's so much noise about health and wellness and fitness and protein and carbohydrates and strength training. And, it is quite confusing. And I would say that what you do isn't the thing that is spoken about very much. It's all about the strength. There's a huge amount now, particularly in the female area. They're talking about, it's really important to build that strength for their bones, and as you get older, to prevent osteoporosis, and obviously that's really important. So where does that sit in terms of when you're training and people's misconceptions of what you do?
That's a powerful question to lead with. So I teach mobility, and mobility it's a combination of flexibility and strength. I.e., I don't really teach passive flexibility. Passive flexibility is you just reach down to touch your toes and stay there. That's passive. You're relaxed in the position. Another idea is if I was trying to achieve a split and I just put my hands on the ground, what I would feel most people would say, I feel a stretch. I feel a sensation of stretch within my body. And when you're lifting a weight, most people would say, I feel a sensation of burn. I feel a sensation of strength. So sometimes these ideas get quite mismatched. I teach active flexibility. You could call what I do active flexibility or mobility. Mobility is only going as far into your flexibility as you are strong. So you're really learning to hold positions. So there's definitely a strength aspect to what I teach, but I would say I really bridge the gap between strength and flexibility. Because really going into that, I meet two subsets of people, and I'm being quite random. One is someone is too strong, and all they do is strength work. And through doing strength work, their body is tight and they are limited and they lack range of motion, i.e., they can't touch their toes, they can't sit in a cross-legged position, they can't sit in a squat, they're missing overhead shoulder flexibility, whatever it is, but their body is tight. On the other side of the spectrum, and there's always in the middle ground, you have people that are overly flexible, which is equally problematic. They're very loose in their joints, super flexible, have the range of motion, but don't have the stability or the strength to be able to hold these positions. Equally problematic and equally can cause pain and problems. So really on that spectrum, I am bang in the middle. People who are really flexible, for example, I'll give you an example for this, it's probably better. I've had people come to my workshops who can sit in the splits, but then I give them really basic positions to hold, and they're like, whoa, I really can't hold those positions because all they know is passive flexibility. And again, you get someone who comes down who's super strong, and then I give them what I would call really a basic stretch, and they really struggle in these positions. So I'm right in the middle. I only teach mobility, which is strength within flexibility. A really good example is if you tried to stand as wide as you could without holding on, that would be a really good example of mobility. And you could do this forwards or sideways, but you can't put your hands on the ground. And what you would experience is you experience strength because you can't hold on, but you would also experience flexibility because you're going to your end range.
So I've got so many questions to ask you, but I'll just start actually with my daughter, because I think this is quite an interesting one, because she's always wanted to do the splits. And I think during lockdown, it was something that she was trying to do, and she couldn't get there. And is that something, just obviously that's quite a personal thing, but is that something that that it might be the fact that she can't do it, or the fact that or the fact that she's got to train in a different way? Could most people do the splits?
I think a lot of people want to do the splits. I think a lot of I think a lot of people see the splits and it looks cool, right? I remember watching movies in the 90s, right? Jean-Claude Van Damme. It's like awesome, the splits. Um, I'm going to answer the question in a different way because I think it's important. Is it looks cool, but how useful is the split? Let's go down that route. It's like, what's the point of having the splits? As I was just mentioning, I've had people like come to my class. I've met people they can do the splits, but can't hold really basic positions and lack the strength to be able to hold that. So, bringing that back, what is the purpose of my training? To look cool or to have a really strong and functional body so I can do what I can do now when I'm 80 years old? So for me, that is the fundamental question. So when people say, I want to learn the splits, I'm like, okay, what's the purpose of your training? Because my purpose is I want to be able to do everything I can do now when I'm 80. And so I can't answer your question with your goal of I want to be able to achieve this position that might look cool on social media. So I can't answer that question in that way. Yes, there's talk about some people can do the splits, some people can't do the splits. For me, it doesn't really matter. I would just say train the splits, but only go to your range. So for me, I'm doing a diagram of your starting position here, and just say you're only as strong as you can go to here. Right? This would be your mat. So again, how wide can you stand? Sideways. How wide can you stand forwards? That's usable flexibility. It's not about looking cool, but it's something that you'll always benefit from having for life.
So this is really interesting because I think that it's like people saying, I want to lose weight, or I want to get fit, or I want to do it. It's like, what is the long term? And what's interesting, I think there's a lot of younger people talking about longevity and older age, and I think probably when I was your age, I wasn't thinking about that. It was it is becoming very much more aware of how you want to feel in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and how flexible you are, and and actually doing things now consistently and building those habits when you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, it's going to make such a significant difference because you're going to know how to use your body and what you're doing. So I think what you're doing is phenomenal. So let's go back to the child that can sit on the seated squat, and then I think you talked about it, the fact that they're then told that they've got to sit then for the next 7 hours on a chair at school. I have listened to some of your stuff. So where do we lose that? Where do we lose that flexibility?
So your body is not a system. Your body's not like a pension. It doesn't go, you know what, we'll store this for you for later. Right? I think people think that they can just leave their body alone and your body's just going to go, don't worry, you get on with your work and your life and we'll come back to this later, right? Your body is an efficient machine. If you don't use something, it's gone. And that's it. You don't sit in a squat, no worries. We'll take your squat away. You don't kneel on the ground, no problem. We'll take that away. You obviously don't want it. You're obviously not using it. You don't move your shoulders overhead, no worries. You don't backbend, no problem. Your body doesn't care. Your body is not thinking about your long-term future plan. Your body's living for the moment. Bodies are like dogs and cats, right? They're not thinking long-term. They're trying to survive the day. So to your body right now, it doesn't matter what you do. But we can future think. We can plan and go, it's very likely I'm going to live to X, like 85. Right now it's getting higher and higher for people that are born these days. So you can future plan. You can go, well, it's probably very likely that I'm going to be living to this age. And it would be probably very useful for me to be able to do all of this. And also, if I look to other cultures, Asia, China, Japan, where people can move really well in their 80s, well, actually, that's very possible and it's very real and it exists. So we've got all these different factors coming together. But the main point is your body doesn't care if you lose it. And so when people sit on a chair all day, which is common, right? We live in 2025. People work at their laptop. People seem to be surprised that they're in pain and they have problems. And they say, oh, I can't believe it, my shoulders are rounded or my back is rounded. And for me, it's just normal. It's just like, of course it is. Right? It's 2025. This is what you do. Unless you have a practice where your goal is to reverse that and your objective is, I really want to undo that and I must follow along with the training to do that, then your body will be like that because, as I said, your body's not going to keep it for you. Right? It's just going to be like, you don't need it. If you want to see a great example of that, look at the older generation in the West. What you will see is bodies that have decided that they no longer need the movement and they're not going to keep it for you. If you look to other cultures, you'll see there's a lot of training and a lot of focus on the way that they move, and you'll see a very different picture of the older generation and how they move. So it can be a very big cultural thing. I live out in Gloucestershire, so when you live in London, you see a very different picture. So half my road are retired, and I know their problems because they tell me every day. I've got this. I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with this, and I always say to them, listen, you've got to have a practice. You've got to have a practice in place to undo these limitations. It's not normal that your bodies are falling apart, but that you don't have a practice. And until you get a practice, it will just keep happening.
But I suppose that's like everything else. It's the same with how you're eating, how you're doing. People just think the body's there and they abuse it. They don't look after it, and they don't give the practice. So you talk about the people who've lost it, and it comes back to the same sort of question: is can they get a lot of their movement back from doing the practice?
Absolutely. The body adapts at any age. What really you're fighting against? A lot of people think that they're fighting against age. They're like, now I'm this age, right? What they really mean to say is, now's time has gone by. What we're really looking at is the amount of time that you haven't trained. It's not necessarily an age thing. Your body will adapt, whatever your age. There's millions of stories. There's loads of people I follow on social media. They're crazy, inspiring, and moving their bodies in all ways. But of course, if you've gone decades without doing any form of training or joint movement to really work on opening up these positions, it's going to take time. And so if you do approach a mobility practice, you really have to, I say to people, have a 10-year plan in place. Like, take your age now, whatever that age is, and put 10 years on it and go, I really want to do X within the next 10 years. Because you're playing around with joints and tendons, you're not going to see quick progress. And so a lot of people, when they start this, they assume that they're suddenly going to be able to kneel on the ground. And if they haven't for years, or, I'm saying, like, really basic positions are going to take time to get back. And you're not going to see quick progress with that.
So that's really helpful, because I think everything is we want everything now, short term, short term. And I think someone said years ago, we're jumping in front of a microwave asking it to go faster, while we're cooking our food.
Love that.
and we want everything now. We want and actually we are living in an incredible I think time where we can get things very quickly, but some of these methods, like the body and everything else, it does take time. And I think I shared a story with you when I was talking earlier, that when I was 11, I was run over by a car. I was hit by a car, thrown onto the road, and it was in Birmingham actually, and then I spent 4 months in hospital, where your leg was put up in traction, old-fashioned stuff. I think I was in the children's burns unit. It was a horrific 4 months, actually. And then when I came out, I was never really taught how to walk again. So therefore, as a consequence, all my years, I've walked with my foot slightly turned in, and you don't notice it as years go by. But now, obviously, the ankle's changed, and when I go skiing, the slightly compromised, the leg slightly shorter, and I'm pretty fit and agile. The only problem is I can't kneel, and how that's shortened over time. And I keep thinking, how on earth did I not see that or do that? But it's definitely something. And I was also saying that we always come across people at the right time, and that's why I'm loving this conversation. And I'm certainly going to be doing your method. So let's go on to your method, because you've got the Frampton method. What does that entail?
Cool. I just want to say something on your story, because I think what you highlighted there is super interesting and helpful for what we were even discussing, because you had this accident, and your body, you said that your foot turns out, for example. So what happened there is your body couldn't do what it could do, and so it created a new way to do the same thing. I.e., if there is food or an apple tree over there, and you need to get to it, and your body can't get to it in one way, it will develop a new way to get to it. So what I'm saying is the body's phenomenal. It developed you a new method. It went, we can't get it this way. Here's a new way. So that's what compensations and adaptations are. So all of these issues that people face sometimes are actually really clever compensations from the body to still be able to survive. They're survival mechanisms. And what I was saying before, it's fantastic that the body has that resource to do things another way. And through training, we can, of course, teach the body, or depending on the situation, of course, but we can reteach and adapt the body in ways that we want. So I just wanted to highlight that, because I said a lot of people will have had circumstances similar to yours and see it as an issue or a limitation when their body has developed something amazing from that. And that's why I love the body. It's like you literally have a tool. You have a body that you can move and adapt in any way you want. Look at all the sports in the Olympics. People go, I'm going to adapt my body to do this. I'm going to adapt my body to do this. And it's all possible through training. I'm going to adapt my body to juggle. You can do anything. And that's why it's fantastic. You literally live inside this machine, which you can teach to do anything you want. It requires patience and discipline and time and all of that, but that's why I love this stuff, because it's like one day I couldn't sit in a squat and now I can, and that's ridiculous. That's the idea, is just like obscene.
I love that. And thank you so much for highlighting that, because as I say, it's all very well us having these conversations and having a lovely time this morning, but I want people to go away with some really, really insightful stuff from our conversation, because it means a lot to me, actually. And I think what you talk about the body is an extraordinary thing, and we should celebrate it and be very grateful for everything it gives us. So let's hear about the Frampton method. So what is it that you teach, really?
I think the main thing you can come down to is the main thing I teach people is purpose, rather than even the training itself, because the training itself is meaningless unless we have that deeper purpose of what it is that we're trying to do. So I really teach people, and I would teach how to move, not even that we move. I'm not really about, we just need to move more, because, that's just banging your head against a brick wall. So does that count as moving more? Well, no, not really, because we know that's probably not going to be good for you. So moving well for the purpose of, we want to be moving and feeling great now, but also be moving well throughout our life. And it said at any age. And I said, I always want to be able to do now what I could when I'm 70, when I'm 80, whatever age I live to. The only thing, I want to be able to move the very day before I die. I want to be able to do everything I can do now.
So I just wanted to thank Maggie Wellness for sponsoring this podcast. I have always been really lucky with my hair. It's always been full and healthy. I've never really needed much help. But then I was lucky enough to try some of the products from Maggie Wellness. And I cannot tell you, my hair is so much fuller, shinier, and it's growing faster than ever. If you're dealing with thinning hair, breakage, or hair loss, their shampoo, conditioner, rejuvenating serum, and supplements are designed to nourish the scalp and support healthy hair growth. What I really love too is that there are no harsh chemicals. Maggie Wellness products are 100% vegan, cruelty-free and free from SLS, silicons, parabens, GMOs and PEGs, and they're all in beautiful, sustainable packaging. So if you want stronger, healthy hair, why not try some of Maggie Wellness products, and you can get 20% off, excluding bundles, with the code EAT20. you go to the bottom of this podcast, you can see the code EAT20 and there's the link.
And that's my plan. So I will really always come down to that. And so I think the method is really embracing that approach, because then the exercises, then they can fit within that. But it all comes down to this purpose. Because it's interesting, right? Because sometimes I go to the gym, I train. I could train at home, but sometimes I like to go to a different environment and train around other people. And I'm there, and I'm doing my kind of functional stuff. And then there'll be like a guy next to me who's doing bicep curls, for example. Now, it's not wrong that he's doing that or that I'm doing this, but he just have a very different purpose. He's trying to attract a mate, right? So his goal is getting big bicep, and for him, that's important. That's his goal, right? Essentially, right? That's what he's trying to do. I want to get big muscles so I can attract whatever, right? And so it's always that purpose, right? The person who's trying to lose weight, they have a purpose, and it's very different to mine. I'm not trying to do that, and that's not my world. So they're going to be running up and down on a treadmill or whatever, or doing whatever they're going to do. But that's cool, because that's their purpose. So the purpose that I teach is that it's like, I'm not about weight loss or trying to change, the visual of my body. But for me, the purpose of the stuff that I teach is about how I move now and how I move in the future. So I think the key term, and exactly what I said in my TED Talk, it's all about how we move. Because for me, that is really going to make the difference over the long term.
Yeah, it is really interesting, isn't it? You think about what it is you want to achieve. There are a couple of times, I think I had a physio one time and said, you've got to remember that, falling down is a big problem for people as they get older. You need to learn to fall down and get up without using any of your hands. Whatever. Sometimes I'm out walking the dog and I do it. I just want to sit down and walk on the grass and then get up without using my hands. And I'm sure one or two people will think I'm absolutely mad, but I am anyway. But
no, you're not mad. You're not mad at all. This is real. This is real life. This is, learning how to get up and down off the ground without using your hands. Like, how real a circumstance is that? Let's look at the data of falls, right? You can go, well, okay, there's a high chance that if I don't train this, my body's going to lose it and I'm going to lose the ability to do it. So what an amazing practice to teach yourself how to be able to get up and down, and useful, functional, and real for life.
I think it's also, I think I've been very lucky, and I think it's, whether it's luck or not, but I've come across amazing people in my life, and I've listened to them. I think that's always been quite helpful. Doesn't mean to say one doesn't have one's issues and own struggles, but I think it's been really, really key to me, and that's why I'm loving doing this podcast, because there's so many amazing people that I can have conversations with. So talk to me about, so if someone is sitting all day, so there are people, there's nothing they can do about it. They're sitting in an office, they've got a job to do. I've got to have one of these balls underneath my desk, whatever, and every so often I just get off and roll on it, because I can feel my body getting stiff. So what is it that people can do that can help them with the sitting issue if they have to sit all day? What are some of the tips, or what are some of the things they could do to help them?
Got it. Number one, relax. Enjoy yourself. I'm serious. I'm not a fan of there's a certain way that you should sit, and if you don't sit like this, you're going to wreck your posture. I sit a lot. I go in coffee shops. I spend lots of time on laptops and whatever. It's okay. It's totally normal. It's 2025. Why would you not be sitting at a desk? So that's totally cool. What people don't have is a practice outside of that. I'm very about separating my practice and my life. In my life, I can sit at laptops. I don't really focus on how I sit. I've done videos on better ways to sit, but really it's just, focus on your work. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Don't make it a big deal. Everyone's doing it. It's super normal. But make sure you have something in place which opposes it. Now, I don't really care about sitting down, because I know later that day I'm going to be doing some training which is directly opposing the stuff that I'm going to do in the daytime. So if you're sitting down all day, but then you also don't have a practice where you're doing something to reopen the body, then of course that would be the missing piece that you want to address. So again, I'm not about, beating people up for sitting down. It's completely normal. That's what you're going to do. Crack on with it, but just do something outside of it that opposes it. And let's look at the sitting position. And you can it's really obvious what's going to get tight. The shoulders are going to round forward because your focus is forwards. The spine is going to round. Caroline adjusting her posture. It's okay. And your spine is going to round. Your hip flexors are going to get tight because, essentially you're holding your knees up when you're sitting down. And you're only sat halfway down, which is a really odd position on the body. Like there's a funny interview where someone is walking through the street in China, and they're going up to people who are sitting in squats, and they're like, "Why do you sit in a squat?" And they go, "Well, I'm just tired from standing." But it's so revealing. It's like, well, that's what you do. That's what humans do when they rest. They squat down. So us in the West thought we were super cool and decided we don't want to sit down in a squat, and we're going to invent chairs to make it more comfortable. And it's that key factor, comfort. I'm going to invent a sofa so I can relax and be more comfortable. So whenever you try to reinvent the wheel and make life more comfortable and invent technology and TVs and ways to interact with people around the world from your phone and get food delivered to your door. And when you have all these conveniences in life, there is a price to be paid for that. And the price that we pay is how we move and feel every day. So, and people don't realize that through these conveniences and these comforts that we're lucky to have, we can make money from our laptop without even walking out the door. It's ridiculous. Like the technology that we have access to, it's amazing, but it comes at a price. And most people have all the benefits of the comforts and the conveniences, but they're not willing to pay the price. And I always say, you've got to pay the piper. And what the piper wants is for you to spend a little bit of time working on your body. So it's always coming back to, am I paying the piper?
There's something that I was listening to of yours, which you were talking about. People think about the muscles and the areas, and think, but actually you've got to look at your shoulders and your hips. So how it's the joints, the rotating, and so because I suppose what you're saying is when someone could be doing a position in yoga or Pilates, but their body could be overcompensating from one way or the other because their body is misaligned or this is shortening somewhere. Whereas with what you're doing is you're looking at all that, aren't you? You're looking at the alignment of everything and where their body is.
A lot of people, just say for example, they'll come into a class, right, and they'll go, and I'll go, how long have you been doing this? And they'll go, I'm a beginner. I'm quite new to this, for example. And I always remind them that they're not a beginner. And I go, who taught you how to move? Right? Who taught you to move? Your parents? I bet they're not. I bet as a toddler you move better than your parents. I can guarantee that. So it's really key, whether it's branded under yoga or Pilates or try to break down into some form of method. The best movers on this planet, without a doubt, are the toddlers. And they move phenomenally. They don't think about all these different perfect shapes and positions, but it's like a crazy, phenomenal flow, which is beautiful to watch. The knees and joints and the feet, they interact through all of this. They go through in and out of squat shapes, kneeling shapes, cross-legged positions. They're working it all. And so we've obviously tried to break it down into some form of method, which gets branded under like, okay, this is this method and this is this method. The only reason my method really came to be is because they were like, oh, you need to put it into a book, and then I have to break it down into certain aspects, into certain teaching points, and make it easier for people to follow. But the real reality is, it for me is, I'm just trying to get back to what I used to be able to do before it became a priority for me to more learn with my brain in a school. And if you took a toddler and you just left them alone and leave them be in their space, what you'd see, and what you see in tribes, and what I spoke about in my TED Talk, is beautiful movers throughout life that are just naturally moving, right? But of course, we live in a very different world where, you go through schooling and blah, blah, blah. And then through that, the shape of the human body changes.
And then presumably, if you look at different cultures and different parts of the world, you'll see a lot of people using their body in a very different way to the way we used it in the Western world. They are doing the squats, they are sitting there, they don't have the chairs. And where do you see that? Which countries do you see that? Which population?
Well, you see it more. You see it more in Asia, but you also see it more in poorer countries, and that's quite a key aspect. And usually, with wealthier countries, becomes more comfort and more convenience. More convenience, and the more the comfort. The less that you use the body in the way it's intended, the less you're going to be wanting to crawl around through the streets and move your body in a crazy way, right? Or with wealthy countries, becomes tighter clothing. And so you're wearing suits and tight shoes. And essentially, what is that? That's restricting the body to its natural range of motion. Right? Again, you'll see toddlers and kids, they don't have shoes on. They move around, their toes move freely. One of the first things I do when I see people, I get them to start stretching and moving their feet and their toes. Because if you don't get moving, that doesn't move right. You think that won't impact your knees. You think the movement of your knee won't impact your hips. So you're going to get a huge chain reaction. So one of the key aspects is to look at your footwear and how much you're limiting your own movement on a daily basis.
So that's a very interesting thing. So obviously it's got to be your opinion here, but shoes, barefoot shoes, not wearing shoes. What are your views? Because there's a lot of, I've heard a lot about shoes. We're all in trainers, padded trainers, etc.
Yeah.
And things are changing, and our joints are changing. Our health of our joints are changing as a consequence of it. And I'm not saying that because of the trainers, but what is your view on shoes?
Yeah, allow your feet to move freely is what I would say. Don't restrict your range of motion. There is a caveat to that. Of course, we don't live on soil, and so there's firmer surfaces. So, and of course, if for decades you've worn a certain type of shoe, you can't expect to go barefoot and your body to change. It's going to take time, many years, for your body to adapt to the new gait, to the new way that you walk and feel the ground. But essentially, yeah, I wear non-restrictive shoes. I'm more call it non-restrictive. I don't want anything squashing my toes together. Like, shoes are designed for aesthetics. Most shoes in the Western world. Now it's amazing. There's so much on the market which allow your toes to wear freely. But essentially, they squash your toes. And the aesthetic of most modern shoes is it points. It goes into a point, or it goes into a kind of round top. It looks cool within the industry. If you get a normal foot, it almost looks like a clown shoe. So then people don't want to wear barefoot because of the visual look of the shoe. But that's how a foot is. A foot goes out and around and is bigger around the toe box than it is around the next part down.
So this is our misconception, isn't it? Because the Viva Barefoot, I think a lot of people didn't like that when they came out because they didn't look very nice. They didn't.
Right.
Just say that. Sorry, whoever wants to say
it's true, but I think even Vivo know that. They know that, and there's no getting around that because people have become so used to a shoe. I was in the fashion industry. A shoe, it's about the way I want to look and the way I want to appeal to other people. It points at the front. It goes into this tight line, and it looks. People prefer that aesthetic. But the problem with that aesthetic is it limits your toes. It squashes your toes together.
A couple of things. People who have had an injury and want to get back from that, is this something that they can do? Is your method something that they can do as well?
Yeah. So when it comes to injuries, I'm always very clear that I'm not a physio, and I don't specialize in rehab. I'm not really. That's not my realm of interest. I really look at general mobility, and so when it comes to injuries or issues, it's always best for people to get a specific diagnosis on that area. I deal with general mobility. As I said, I look at how toddlers move and how we can put steps in place to regain or reincorporate some of the stuff that we all did as kids. So it's not, we're going to learn something brand new that you've never learned before. It's what's tight let's get it undone. So I always say I work within the prehab realm, which is I'll explain this with the cycle of pain, which is what most people live in. And most people go along life, they don't have a practice, and this is the key thing, and this is what I try and help people to incorporate. When we don't have a practice, we come across problems. So you might get some hip pain, some knee pain, some neck pain, whatever comes up for you as a result of not having a practice. So we have some neck pain come up or whatever it is, and we go and see someone. We go and see a physio. They fix the pain. I feel great, and I walk off and I carry on. But there's a problem. I didn't then get a practice. I just went off into life and said, "Oh, that's resolved." And then they go along through life, and another problem comes up. And this time it's the knees, and then another problem comes up, and these problems just keep coming up. Essentially, a cycle of pain is you're not really addressing the core issue. The core issue of not having a practice of looking after your joints. You're fixing a problem, and then going back to doing nothing, fixing problem, nothing, fixing problem, nothing. So when people have got injuries, I always say, look, get the injury resolved, see whoever you need to see around the injury. But don't fix that injury and then go, tick, now I can go off into life and do nothing, because I can guarantee that something further is going to come up. So when I say to people, listen, I don't do rehab, I do prehab, they're like, yeah, but I really need to fix this. And I'm like, that's fantastic, but don't forget about the rest of your body, because while you're so focused on this problem in your knee, you're still not doing basic maintenance on your toes and your neck and your back. So all of that will be falling to the wayside because you're really focused on this injury or this limitation. So if you need to see someone, like whoever is a specialist within that area to do with that specific injury or area of the body, to see that. But the most important for you is to have a practice going forward, so you're ahead of the game. So these injuries, etc., don't just keep happening to you because the body is tight and restricted.
So give me an idea of how long your practice would take for an average person a day.
So I like to get started. I like to get people started on 10 minutes a day, no more, because the purpose is to try to get them into a habit of training every day. And so my whole thing is do 10 minutes a day. It's usually broken down into different areas, but people can also choose areas. So, for example, Monday, 10-minute balance work. Tuesday, 10-minute hip work. Wednesday, 10-minute footwork, wrist work, whatever that may be. But then you also might get people that know that certain areas are limited. For example, they might be, my balance is pretty good right now, or whatever that may be, but I really noticed, my shoulders are starting to round forward. I'd really like to work on that. And so their practice would still be 10 minutes a day, but they would be working on those specific joint areas.
So it's the consistency, isn't it? It all comes down to compound. I'm a great believer in compound everything.
Warren Buffett is it's loads of this. If you're a fan of investing, then you understand this all day long, right? You don't if you put money away for the future, if you look at it within a week, you're not going to see any difference. If you look at it even within a year, it's going to be up and down. But over the long term, right, your expectation or the view, if you hone out, is always going to be up. The trajectory will always be positive. And if you think about it, right, everybody is on everybody throughout life. This is an interesting concept. Everyone throughout life is on a negative, right? For example, if you don't do any joint work or any work on your body, everybody is on a slow decline. Right? I know it sounds horrific to say that, to explain it that way. So I always try and explain it like this. If you're doing nothing, you're on a slow decline. If you're doing something, you're blocking that decline. So even if you're not making progress, because that's the biggest, because progress is so slow, people feel they're not making progress and then they stop doing it. This is why this work is so hard to get people into doing, because it's so slow. Then if you're not making progress in it, you're actually flatlining, i.e. you're not on a negative spiral. So when people say to me, I've been doing this a couple of weeks, and I'm like, you haven't been doing this for decades. Just a couple of weeks is like a speck of dust. And then I'm not seeing progress. And I'm like, listen, but you're not going negative. Everyone is going negative. If you're doing nothing, you're going negative. Your body's always getting more and more limited, more restricted. So if you're seeing no progress, fantastic, right? All I need to do right now is just not go backwards. Just keep my ability to sit in a squat, keep my ability to, to do these basic movements that I can do. But I'll always be reaching for the positive, but I'm not obsessing about the positive. I'm just trying to maintain what I've got.
It's quite funny because when I was talking to someone about all the stretching the stuff that I'm doing, and I said, look, I am where I am. I just don't want to get any worse. So if I can just keep it where I am, I'm in a very good place. If I can improve it, that's great, isn't it? So it is that philosophy, it's your mindset. The question I'd like to leave our listeners with is, what are the 3 key takeaways about mobility? What were the 3 tips you'd leave people with?
Okay, so let's base this on some of the concepts that we've spoke about today. So I'd say the first key is really decide on what your purpose is and what you want from training. It doesn't have to be the norm, weight loss, looking good. It could be how you move. That's really my philosophy, and as I said, my purpose is I want to move when I'm 80 like I move now. And that's everything, all my training or any movement I do really comes back to that key purpose. So I would say get really clear on what your purpose is. And if that's a certain type of training doesn't fit that, then let it go. The second key concept is habit. And I guess it ties into the first one, but the first one is try to get a habit of training. We've been taught to brush our teeth since we were babies. We're really good at learning habits. When people say, I'm terrible at habits, I guarantee you brush your teeth even when you're tired and hungover. So it's just trying to get the ball rolling. It's going to feel weird at the beginning to get into a daily practice of working on your joints. But you want to get to the place where if you went to bed without doing some joint work, it would feel like going to bed without brushing your teeth. You want it to feel like, my body, like the same way your mouth feels when you don't brush your teeth like that. That's how my body feels when I don't train. So get a habit going. And that's why I really try and get people doing 10 minutes a day, because it's not, you're just trying to accumulate, which is 60 hours a year. It adds up. It's a lot. Maybe the third one could be why you'll quit. I recently did a video called Why You'll Quit. When we're working on long-term movement, as you're working on that, like if you go for a run, the next day you'll find, you can get further, you can run faster, blah, blah, blah. You see really quick progress when you're working on a training system like running. Or weightlifting or general practices of fitness, you tend to see quite quick progress. When you're working on changing joint structure, i.e. tendons and how joints move, it's really, really mind-numbingly slow. I love it. It teaches me to be a super patient person and to not chase quick fixes. It absolutely sucks because I'm all the time, I feel like I'm not making progress, and then every now and then you get a blip. But just know that if you're doing this stuff, just remind yourself you've been sitting on a chair or taught to sit on a chair since you were 5 years old, and that time has accumulated hugely, and it's going to take that time or some time to start to reverse that process. And I want to really be key on this, that your body adapts regardless of age. Your body's always adapting, but just sometimes on the surface, you can't see that adaptation play out.
It's that lovely thing called just trust, knowing. Stay with it, just trust, just know, and do it because you want to do it, and do it because it feels good at the end of the day. And you'll get to where you want to get if you give it time. This podcast has always been, and the introduction comes in, it's always about belief, hard work, tenacity. You can make things happen. And I think the belief is a very big one. Very big one.
True. I love that. Work hard and anything's possible. Even though I run a business and which is about, taking care of customers and getting more clients or whatever that is. I always like, for me, it's always about, as long as I work hard, especially with my training, and as long as I'm always being the example, then that's fine. Then people will people will see that and will be drawn to that. So the most important part of my day is my training, and then it's just showing people. I want to show people what's possible, and I know people will warm to that.
Oh my goodness, I could talk to you for hours. It's been such a lovely conversation, and we've unravelled a lot, but there's loads more to unravel. And well, we're going to stay in touch big time. But so our listeners know, where can they find you? Where are you? Where are your books and everything else?
Awesome. Yeah. So books are at all good bookstores. Oh, it's just a joke. It's a bad bookstore, doesn't it? No, Amazon or wherever you get your books from. Two books are out. First one, The Flexible Body, which is my Bible, and the second one, which is more about passive stretching and 7 minutes a day. It's called Stretch. Wrote that a few years ago. The main hub or the main central part of where people can find me is roger.coach. We run stretch challenges to help you develop a habit of working on your joints and training every day from 10 minutes a day.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Roger, thank you so much for giving your time. And I hope the listeners they'll take up so much information. I just think, to watch the children now and how they move. And I think it's, I'm going to be watching them even more. And you just see them on the beach and the way they squat and everything else. You just think, gosh, I'd love to be able to do that. So, well, there you go.
Yeah, and just on that, and just in case people are listening, who are parents who are listening to this, who have got little toddlers as kids, a lot of them say, what's the best thing I can do for my toddler? What should I get them doing? And I always say this: be an example, right? Leave them to it. They're fine. They're amazing, right? They're gonna move beautifully, right? You don't need to do anything with them. But if they see you moving well and taking care of your joints, then they go, oh, that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm going towards. So you take care of you, and I promise you, they're going to take care of them.
Oh, that's such a lovely note to leave on. Thank you, Roger, so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Caroline.